Sales is the most lucrative skill in the world, period. The problem is most sales advice out there today is outdated, cheesy, and can even keep you from getting the deals that can make all the difference in your career. This is the No BS Sales School, a podcast for entrepreneurs and salespeople who want to master the skill of selling without all the BS. Welcome to the No BS Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Walker McKay. Today, I have as my guest, Livi Redden, who is awesome. I can't wait to read you her profile. But we're going to talk today. The reason I want you to listen is why mindfulness and healing matter in sales and business. Why mindfulness and healing matter in sales and business. And my guest is freaking awesome. I'm going to read you her biography. 20-year-old Livi Redden is a podcast host, mindset educator, entrepreneur, and writer. Through her social platforms such as TikTok, where she has over 70,000 followers, her global virtual book club, and her book dropping in early 2022, she teaches teens and 20-somethings how to intentionally design their life through the power of emotional intelligence, mindfulness, and accountability. So, I don't know if you heard this right. Livi is 20 years old. I did not know that. She invited me to be on her podcast a couple of days ago. We had a great time, and she has maturity way beyond her years. So y'all, let's listen up and give her a big old welcome. Livi, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Walker's awesome. We had a really good time recording my podcast, so I think this is going to be a really good episode.
It was super freaking fun. I loved it too. So take a minute, take 2 minutes, right? Because it probably shouldn't take you longer than that since you're only 20 years old. And tell us the story of how did you become Livi Redden with 70,000 TikTok followers, a book coming, and a whole bunch of other programs. How'd you do that? What's your story?
What is my story? So to make it Cliff Notes, I grew up in a family where we had to have a lot of deep conversations from an early age because my dad got terminally ill when I was 11. And so I think there was a big growing up moment since I was a child. And, I was always that kid that was like, you have an old soul, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, it's also like trauma. And so I started getting into personal growth stuff since when I was 12. And
at age 12.
Yeah.
Let me stop for a second. Do you have siblings?
One. Older.
Brothers, sisters? One?
Sister. She's 24.
Okay. How much older?
4 years.
So she's much older than you. She's 25% older than you at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you started getting into self-help mindfulness. What did you find at age 12 that resonated with you about self-help?
Yeah.
What was the book? What was the thing?
There's one story in specific. I mean, I was like a Chicken Noodle Soup fan, I love to read the Chicken Noodle Soup books. And there's one specific story that hooked me. And I write about this in my book, but I was sitting in the Salt Lake City airport and I was going on my first flight by myself. I think I was 13. And I read this book. I have no idea who wrote it. I have no idea what the book is. And I put in my book, I was like, if this story is from you, please contact me because I have no idea. I have no idea who you are. And it was a story about a guy. He was an author, and essentially he was at a convention where he was trying to get his book published. And what he did was he went and took a seat up on the stage where the big authors were. And he looks to the security guard and he was like, sorry, I'm late. And even though he wasn't supposed to be there, he was like a little guy. And he saw an empty desk and he took the seat and he was like, sorry, I'm late. There was traffic. And the security guard looked at him and was like, okay. And he got published that day. And it was and he went back the following year.
No shit.
He was in the same spot and he was actually supposed to be there, had a talk with that same security guard. Wow. And the security guard was like, I knew you weren't supposed to be there. I just liked that you had the initiative to take the seat.
I freaking love that.
And that one story that I read when I was 13 has been one of my main motivators throughout my whole life. I have Take a Seat on my mirror. I talk about it in my book. I love that story. embroidered it into a frame on my wall. I just love it.
Come on. All right. So give me an example of how you have done that in your life.
Yeah. And I think, of course I was lucky to have parents that really wanted me to, grasp opportunity, and they cheered me on, especially my mom. And so when I see opportunity, I take it. So 2020, it's about almost like early 2020. So almost 2 years ago, I stopped going to college, even though I was on a full ride and some people didn't want me to. And I started my podcast because I loved podcasts, and I had always wanted to write a book. So I started writing my book, and I started my business back then, like a year and a half ago. Back then, I was doing podcast production for companies. Yes. And then I started doing what I do now, which is, writing and marketing for coaches. And then I do my stuff on the other side with mindset and mindfulness. And that's where I'm at now. Yeah. And I'm loving it.
It's freaking cool. So tell me something. So you're into this, you have embraced, and just from our conversations, I know that you're actually, your mindset, your whole aura about you is so positive and so strong. What's is the hardest thing that you have to go through to keep that your mindset the way you have? What's the hardest thing that you've got to overcome, maybe every day?
We talked about this a little bit. I don't know if it was on the podcast or after when we were recording for mine, but I think constantly aligning yourself is really tough for anybody. And I talk a lot about living in alignment. And I think...
What does that mean? For my listeners that wouldn't know what that means, and I'm not so sure I know exactly what that means, what does that mean?
So I think living in alignment takes a few things. I think in order for you to live in alignment, you have to heal from your past, because if you are not healed, you're living in your past. And that is, I'm not going to get into the neuroscience of that, but I also am really interested in neuroscience. Okay. But there's essentially, your brain is also, if you don't rewire it, it is wired as your past self. And if you aren't, and when you heal, your brain physically rewires. And so if you aren't healing from your past, you are physically living in your past. It's not just like a saying. And so I think healing is one thing you have to do to live in alignment. 2, I think you need to know where your non-negotiables are. And I think that is for life, for business. You have to know where you won't budge, where your core values are. Like one of the values I hold really dearly is honesty. I will not budge on honesty. If I have to lie to do anything, I'm out. I'm not doing it. Yeah. And I think those things encapsulate living in alignment. I also think with emotional intelligence, improving your emotional intelligence, your ability to understand your own emotions, other people's emotions, to communicate. I think that allows you to live in alignment, because it allows you, once you learn about your own emotions and how to convey them and how to create healthy relationships, you're able to live more as your full self, your loving self. And you're able to attract better people that are aligned with you into your life, and you're able to create a life that's more aligned with you, because you know how to express how you feel, and that doesn't scare you.
So tell me something. How would somebody who maybe has never heard this term before, who's not familiar with that, how would they recognize whether they are in alignment or out of alignment? How would somebody, I guess it takes a certain amount of self-awareness to start with, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would say...
And so how would somebody recognize?
Right. I think that's a good question. I mean, I'm not going to act like I know everything, because sometimes I think...
Come on, damn it. You've been on the planet for 20 years. Surely you've learned.
You don't know everything yet.
I've got shoes older than you, so keep talking.
Yeah, I think the first answer that I think of is you just kind of know. Like, I think you know when you're off, and when you feel off, and when you feel unfulfilled, and when you feel unhappy. I think you know if you're willing to pause for a moment and listen to your body. But the real question is, how do I hone the courage to act on it and change it and listen to what my body is trying to tell me.
How did you find the courage? Yeah. How did you do that? Or how do you do that? Right. Because it takes that every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I constantly try and remind myself of the big picture, and I just figure I would rather live in the alignment than the latter. Like, even though it's hard, I think not being who you are and not showing up as yourself is even harder. So why would I do that?
Well, it wears you down. Right?
Yeah.
So I would think what you're saying is that if you feel unfulfilled in your career or your life, if you are not feeling joy, if you are not, if you feel like you're not growing as a person, right, then maybe those are some symptoms or signs that maybe you're not living in alignment. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, that was a big reason why I left college, because I was like, this doesn't feel like me. I know I have this other opportunity coming my way, and my body and whether or not you believe in spirituality, that's a part of my life. And I was like, and I feel like my spirit is not loving this. And I like to fuel my spirit. And I was like, I'm going to peace out. I'm dipping and I'm going to do my thing.
So let me hit on this, because I think it's a question a lot of people my age think about with the college thing, right? And it's the cost of tuition is incredible these days, right? I've got I have a son in college, and the tuition over 4 years is a little over $200,000 plus beer money. And that doesn't include spring break. It doesn't include spring break. It doesn't include any of that other shit or whatever. So it's expensive as shit. And it's something luckily I've been saving for, but I guess I'm kind of a believe it for other people, but maybe not for me. I tell people, gosh, if I took $200,000 and I told my son, I'll give you $100,000 to start a business, and I'll spend $50,000 on coaches in the next 3 years, where would he be at the end of that time versus a college education? And I realize that the college experience is more than just a classroom, right? There's all kinds of things that are learning and growing and meeting that happen. But at some point, there's got to be a point where people say, this is too much. This doesn't make sense. When you told your mom, your dad's still alive, or has he passed away?
He passed away when I was 17.
He passed away. What'd you say to your mom when you said, I'm out of here? When I'm out of college, what did you say? I'm going to drop out of college. What'd she say? She
said, okay. I mean, we've always had a really trusting relationship, and her thought was also, you worked super hard to have all your college paid for. Like, you worked your ass off for that. Are you sure? And so I took a gap year. I applied and I said, hey, would you hold my scholarships? I have this business going. Let me show you. And they agreed. And so I was able to take a year to decide. So technically this year was the year, like mid this year, where I was really like fully out of college, where I really lost all the scholarships and all that.
My gap is going to be longer than a year. In other words. Yeah. Do you think you'll ever go back?
I think I would. Like, I am no means a college hater. I think it really depends on the person. Because like you said, with your son, I think some people, there's just such a variety of the way people are built and mentally wired. I think college is great for some people. I just don't think it was my thing. And I had the capability to be structured, and I had opportunity coming to my life, and it made sense. I think I would go back, maybe for like to study neuroscience or psychology or something like that. Or even, I don't know if I would go into the business school like I was, but I think I would do something maybe something a little more tactical, like journalism, so I could be a better writer, maybe even like animation or design, so I could have more artistic skills. I don't know.
So let's go back to this idea about mindfulness and healing. What's the first step towards mindfulness is what? Obviously, it's paying attention. But what is it? What does mindfulness mean? What does that even mean?
I think it means to be present. I actually had a little breakthrough a few days ago. In the past, month, I've been having I'm someone that struggles with anxiety. Me and Walker have talked about a little bit about this in the past, and
we are fellow travelers on the anxiety trail.
Yes, love the anxiety trail. Didn't know, didn't really get diagnosed until a few years ago, like 2 years ago. And I've been having really bad bursts of anxiety the past month, right before I go to sleep. And I kept saying to myself, well, that burst of anxiety is just because you are excited to work again tomorrow, which actually has happened before because I do love what I do. I'm very passionate about what I do. And I genuinely get excited like a kid on Christmas Eve going to bed because I'm excited to get going again. And I had a little come to Jesus moment 2 days ago. And I was like, the way you're lying to yourself, this is not an excitement thing. You are killing yourself. You need to chill out. And it was just my body trying to tell me, you haven't spent any time with us lately. You haven't, we need you, and you haven't done any hobbies. I can't remember the last time I didn't work all weekend. And it was my body telling me hey, we're dying and we need you to do things that
slow down. Yeah.
And the second I had that thought and took that moment to pause and really listen to my body as if it was a little kid, hey, I'm listening to you. Tell me what you're trying to tell me. It was instant peace. And it was so just uplifting in that moment. And I was just so grateful. And I think that's a part of mindfulness, is the ability to give your mind a moment to tell you what it wants. Otherwise, it's going to keep hitting that anxiety button. And you're going to be what the hell is happening? I don't know what you want from me. And if you don't take that moment to pause, that anxiety or that stress button is going to keep getting hit. And sometimes you need to take a moment and be and treat your mind as a child. Hey, I'm listening to you. What do you want? And I think that's a big part of mindfulness, is just pausing, taking a second to pause.
Being aware. And so I think so few, and I know I catch myself doing this too, right? A lot of people won't allow themselves to be bored anymore. They don't allow themselves to pause because we have these effing things, right? The addictive, the Apple, the texter and the camera. Oh yeah, it can be used as a telephone too. Just nobody in your generation uses the damn telephone. They always just use the texter part. So what did you do to get back in touch with your, to say, you said your body said, you haven't talked to me in a while. What are you doing now to do that? What is your action?
I made a plan. I thought to myself, okay, well, what can I do to spend more time with just my body and my mind, where I'm not constantly consuming content, whether that's on my phone or reading. And I was I thought to myself, well, you spent your whole life being active. You were an athlete your whole life. And suddenly you stopped. I haven't been meditating. I haven't been going to the gym. And so I started looking for, classes near me, surf. I've been wanting to learn how to surf. So I looked up surf lessons, and this sounds really cliche, but it matters. And so my plan of action was, okay, I think my body wants to just do what it used to do. And so I found a few different classes that I'm going to start taking
healthy and
to have me
happy,
be more
right?
active. Yeah. I don't know about totally happy.
This is what you used to.
I was healthy.
You're healthy, right? And so, all right. So how does one go about, because you mentioned something very powerful this too, right? You really can't focus on mindfulness until you focus on healing. We've all got trauma in our past. Everybody I know has at least 1 million problems, right? And there's only so much bandwidth and time we have to address any of those things. So how does one begin healing?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways. I actually just gave a talk on this. I think healing, first and foremost, you have to be able to say there's something wrong, like this thing in my past is making me act out. So first, just becoming aware and allowing yourself to own it. And then I think the second step of that
stop for a second. Let me stop for a second. So you say, acknowledge it, right? And you say, I'm going to allow myself to acknowledge that's the thing. And so you say, all right, this is bothering me. And then what? Stop running. Stop hiding from it. Got it. So accept that is something that has happened and is a part of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I think, I think the next step is to allow yourself to sit in those feelings. Be like, you know what? I do actually feel pissed off that my parents got divorced, or I feel pissed off that my husband or wife divorced me. It makes me feel angry. And I think allowing yourself to sit in that emotion in a safe space while you're by yourself will allow. And when I gave that talk about healing, I had a girl come up to me after and she said, I don't get why you said I need to sit in my emotions. I don't get it. And I love that she asked me that. And the reason that you need to feel your emotions is that if you don't, your body will keep on sending those anxiety signals, and because at the end of the day, your body wants to keep you safe. It's like a survival organism, whatever you want to call it. It's trying to help you. And if you don't say, hey, why are you sending me these angry triggers all the time when I see my ex-husband? If you never sit there for a second and think and say, I hear you, it's always going to be there. And so I think telling your body that you hear it. And then after that, I think then it's time to really unwrap stuff. And that's where therapy, journaling, meditation comes into place. And once you start really digging into what actually happened, into your emotions, that's when you start learning from your past and you can accept it because you've started to make it work for you. You find out where you learned and where you can benefit from it, and then you can start to move forward.
Okay, cool. I was going to ask you where your thoughts were. It does make sense. I was going to ask you where your thoughts are about medicine, better living through chemistry. What do you think about that?
Yeah, we also talked about this a little bit. I was anti-anxiety medication for so long. I grew up in a family that was like,
sure.
We're fighters. We don't need Jack. We're just gonna power through. And I finally was like, it's beyond just mental control, and you taking medication does not make you weak. And I think there's so many places where we as humans think we're weak for needing other people or making it hard to break a habit. Like, you're not weak. You're just you're a social being. You need people. And two, sometimes your brain is just wired different. That's not even your fault. And it's okay.
Right.
So acceptance.
I love that. Can I tell you a couple things that I've learned from you today that I think are super helpful, and I want to make sure the No BS sales team hears this stuff. You said something, you really gave kind of advice for when you're having anxiety or you have healing to do. And the first thing you said was stop running, which is super powerful to me. Stop running, right? Face it. And then number two, you said sit in your feelings. Find a quiet place and let those emotions roll through you so you acknowledge it. And then this is the part that I really love, which you said, I hear you. You're not telling yourself they're wrong. You're not telling them forget it. You're not saying get that out of your brain or F you or shut up. It's I hear you, right? It's a matter of acceptance, right? It's an acceptance of ourselves, which of course is the beginning to healing, for goodness sake. So that's really great. I really appreciate that. You're a fascinating person and have wisdom way beyond your 20, and surely it's 20 and a half. Are you 20 and a half yet?
I turned 21 in like 2 months.
Okay, good. So you're almost 21. I can feel better about that now. So you've got a lot of wisdom for somebody your age. and a lot of experience. And so there are going to be people in this audience that want to talk to you. How would somebody find you, Livy, if they wanted to hook up? Wanted to have a conversation with you, see if you could help them or whatever.
Yeah. Well, okay. First, there's one other thing I want to say, if that's okay.
Bring it.
To put a bow on it. Okay. To wrap up with what Walker said at the beginning, why healing and mindfulness matters in your business is that truly you need to be in a better state of being to get to the doing. It's going to be really hard to reach your goals and know what goals are actually things you want to achieve if you're not in a good state yourself. And you need to figure out how to be in a better place. And it sucks and it's really hard and it hurts, but man, is it so good for you. So I wanted to say that, be in a better state of being before doing.
Thank you for bringing us home and making that thing make sense. Yeah. Where do we find you?
Yeah. Where to find me? Instagram. You can find me on Instagram, which is just at Livi Redden, LIVIREDDEN. And then also my email is just liviredden@gmail.com. So that's me.
Livy, that's awesome. No BS sales team. I hope you heard, I hope you took notes. And I hope that if you are one out there who struggles like I do, and maybe Livy does with anxiety or depression or any of those other things, that you can maybe take some of those steps to get started and then get some help somewhere. Because there's books out there, there are people you talk to, there are therapists, and it's one of the most important things you'll do. If you like this podcast today, I ask that you, if you have not yet, please subscribe. Give me 5 stars. I'm competitive, right? I want to win. Give me 5 stars. Give me a good review. And some people have asked me, how do I do that? If you go to the main page for my podcast, right, on Apple, wherever you listen to it, and just scroll down, it'll say subscribe and it'll say, rate, put a thing. If you'll do that, that'd be great. I get a couple of emails a week from people who are sharing, saying what they learned or having questions. I love that. Please continue. It's Walker at WalkerMcKay.com. Livi Redden, thank you so much for being a guest on this show. I'm so glad we've gotten to be friends, and I know people are going to learn some stuff from this show. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here, Livi.
Thank you. You're the best. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the No BS Sales School podcast. If you haven't already, please take 1 minute to write a quick review for the show. It really does make a huge difference. Also, subscribe to the show and please forward this episode to somebody else who needs to hear it. As a bonus for listening, I'm going to give you access to a free mini course, 7 expensive sales mistakes you're making and what you can do about it. Go to www.7salesmistakes.com and get access to the free mini course. That's the number 7salesmistakes.com. Thanks again for listening to the No BS Sales School podcast.